Well, Mark Robinson's tenure in public life has shown erratic, sometimes highly offensive statements over and over again. And Donald Trump supported him and endorsed him. In fact, called him better than Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids.
That's right.
Right? So this was predictable. And this is the problem for us Republicans. As long as Donald Trump is your recruiting agent for candidates in swing states, we're going to continue to get our rear ends handed to us. And Mark Robinson is not going to win this race, can't win this race.
He's about 10, 12 points behind.
Right. And he's running against, by the way, a very formidable.
Let's kick things off with a clip of Chris Christie. And while I'm not always his biggest fan, he makes a really important point here about the current state of the Republican Party and the disastrous influence Donald Trump has had in picking candidates. His choices have completely backfired, and we can see two clear examples of that. The most obvious is Mark Robinson in North Carolina, who is going to be a huge drag on Trump and the rest of the Republican ticket in that state. But there's another Republican Trump-backed who is really hurting his campaign, and that's J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance and Mark Robinson recently came together in a way that's pretty satisfying, at least if, like me, you enjoy seeing things that hurt Donald Trump's campaign. I can't wait to dive into this, especially with how J.D. Vance just threw Trump under the bus. But before we jump in, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe, it really helps support the channel. Now, like I said, J.D. Vance, one of Trump's worst decisions in presidential politics, and there's a video making the rounds today that we just have to check out. Thanks to our friends at the Lincoln Project, let's get into some of Vance's biggest gaffes and worst mistakes on the campaign trail so far.
Really stepped up. He's doing a fantastic job.
Well, well, I smile at a lot of things, including bogus questions from the media, man. I'm a normal guy.
I think we have to go to war against the anti-child ideology.
I guess they'd want to have a beer with me because I actually do like to drink beer. And right now, I am angry. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's
one of the most awkward and, of course, disingenuous and inorganic guys out there. J.D. Vance has been just an absolute disaster on the campaign trail for things he said in the past, of course, but somehow he's made it even worse with things he is saying in the present, and we saw an example of that with this recently developed ING Mark Robinson story. And so before we get into what Vance had to say, I think we need the latest updates on Mark Robinson to put it all in perspective. Nearly all of North Carolina GOP gubernatorial candidate Mark Robinson's campaign staff quits after CNN report. A campaign news release said that 4 top staffers have left the campaign, including his senior advisor, his campaign manager, his finance director, and his deputy campaign manager. Now it has been an absolute firestorm, an absolute dumpster fire for Mark Robinson lately, but of course that has also been affecting Donald Trump, as he is a drag on the ticket for the rest of the Republicans in North Carolina, and a lot of attention has been paid to this, and J.D. Vance was finally asked about Mark Robinson, considering Donald Trump did endorse him, and what he said really does not help Donald Trump's case. And I just want to check that out.
With Mark Robinson as the Republican nominee for governor in North Carolina?
Well, look, the allegations are pretty far out there, of course, but I know that allegations aren't necessarily reality. And what I'd say is it's ultimately up to Mark Robinson in North Carolina whether he's going to be their governor and whether he wants to stay in the race.
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public.
Asked about Mark Robinson, J.D. Vance's answer, I don't not believe him. I also don't believe him. I don't know. He's just so confused, really just saying, do you know what, Donald? I'm not going to speak on behalf of the campaign you fend for yourself. I know you're getting attacked for supporting this guy. J.D. Vance doesn't really care, just throwing Donald Trump under the bus, giving him no support. And it's funny because this is a lose-lose situation for J.D. Vance. He can either say that he does support him and draw more attention to Mark Robinson, or say that he doesn't support him and leave his boss out to dry even more, which is essentially what he did. So J.D. Vance, another slip up there, another damaging statement on behalf of Donald Trump. I love how this campaign just continues to get worse and worse for them, and someone who did a great job breaking that all down was Vance, and I want to check that out.
mentioned at the top of the show, and as I'm sure you have all been following, the situation for Republicans in North Carolina got a whole lot worse this week. I mean, CNN released a damning new story on the Trump-blessed gubernatorial candidate in the state, Mark Robinson. You may have seen that. I've already gone through some of the details of that report, but before we get into it, it's important to remember that for all of Trump's weird, hand-picked candidates in cycle after cycle, Robinson is uniquely terrible. I mean, even before this new reporting, a number of Robinson's blatantly anti-Semitic and bigoted statements have long been out there for all to see. He's called homosexuality and transgenderism filth. He has mocked the survivors of the Parkland school shooting and has said that, quote, abortion is not about protecting the lives of mothers. It's about killing a child because you weren't responsible enough to keep your skirt down. Yes, someone running for public office said that out loud. And Trump knew about all of that. A lot of people knew about all of it. And he continued to stand firmly behind Mark Robinson, even saying this just a few months ago.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids. Okay, now, I told that to Mark. I said, I think you're better than Martin Luther King. I think you are Martin Luther King times 2.
MLK on steroids. Now, I talked with Senator Warnock about this a little earlier on the show, but that guy that Donald Trump just talked about appeared to have posted a law on porn site's message board about 10 years ago. And among the many, many comments he left, he said that he was a black Nazi and he expressed support for reinstating slavery. He used racial slurs against MLK and called him an effing commie. He posted that he enjoyed watching transgender pornography despite demonizing the trans community in public. And as uncovered by the Washington Post in a separate story, Robinson also paid a compliment to Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. Mark Robinson has denied he posted these comments despite a lot of evidence to the contrary, and even suggested that AI might have had something to do with it. In an interview with CNN, Robinson said that, quote, he is not going to get into the minutia of how somebody manufactured this. Okay. No surprise. Trump and his campaign are trying to distance themselves from Robinson, of course. I mean, before this new information came to light, there were reports that members of Trump's campaign were urging Robinson to drop out of the race completely. And not only was Robinson absent from Trump's North Carolina rally this weekend, Trump didn't mention him once in the state where he's running for governor. Now, for Republicans who are gobsmacked that they are stuck with a toxic candidate like Robinson, why are you surprised? We've seen versions of this play out before. I mean, does Herschel Walker ring a bell, or maybe Roy Moore? This is all just another example of how far too many members of the Republican Party are blindly following Trump's handpicked nominees, even when they are losers. Now, in a different time, something like this, all of this happening with Robinson, would be a disqualifying scandal. But instead, the North Carolina Republican Party is defending Robinson by saying this, quote, the left needs this election to be a personality contest, not a policy contest, because if voters focused on policy, Republicans win on Election Day. The party of Trump wants a policy contest. Okay, how about the economy? Should we talk about Donald Trump's tariff proposal that would raise the price of goods that you all are buying? Or how about immigration? Should we talk about Trump and his campaign stoking racist lies about migrants? Or should we talk about the bipartisan policy deal on immigration that Trump swooped in to kill? See, Republicans can say that they want to focus on policy rather than personality. But the problem with that is the party of Trump has become a place where the most bombastic, over-the-top, base-riling personalities are rewarded, often with an endorsement from the leader of the party. And Mark Robinson is just the latest.
If Donald Trump really thinks he can make this election about a policy conversation, then have at it. Your policy is Project 2025, and the agenda you have been running away from this entire election. You are scared of your policy because it is so incredibly unpopular. And not only is it unpopular, you can't talk about it, you can't put together a sentence. Sometimes you can't put together a word, Donald, so how would you talk about policy in any meaningful way when your policy is only meaningful to the top 1% in giant corporations? That's it, so make it a policy discussion, please. That is, of course, what we want. And it's so funny that Donald Trump knows his policy is so bad, but doesn't want to focus on character, and his character is so bad, and as well as those around Him and Mark Robinson is a perfect example talking about Project 2025. I'm not only the threat of Donald Trump's agenda, but those advising him, those around him, those in his inner circle, the cultists and crazies that we need to keep from attacking our government. And we need to continue to call that out. And we're going to on this show every single day. And so if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.
Hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around the end, drop a blue heart in this comment. And until next time, I will see you soon.